Good morning. X Winterview is back yet again with another brief dialogue with his dear friend Annastacey. X Winterview has been not giving brief dialogues for quite a while, had a little hiatus there due to technical difficulties. The microphone, the trusty microphone, I don't know what it was doing. It was putting crazy sound artifacts on the audio track, like a wind tunnel. So I've got a new one, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this one will do the trick very nicely, hopefully. But on with the show. As usual, same subject matter, liberation, enlightenment, and all that jazz. I had a subject in particular in mind, but now I've lost it. Lost it within a few seconds of sitting down in the car this morning. Apologies again. So it'll be half an hour of me waffling while I try to remember what it was that I actually wanted to say. On that note, as usual, apologies in advance for the audio quality. For those who have listened to me regularly, thank you. These are recorded in the car on the way to work. Half an hour from my house. Okay, on with the show. Let's go through the basics once again. Never hurts to revisit the basics. There is no independent, individual self, no individual creature that we label ourselves as. There is no one there. The purpose, if there is any purpose, of these dialogues is to give the mind a well-rounded model of understanding. That is the best I can hope to do with a brief dialogue. I, X Winterview, cannot hope to liberate you, dear listener, because there is no X Winterview and no dear listener. That is the fundamental core confusion with most teachings, you could say, books, talks, and so forth. There is no entity here, no thing, no substance that imparts a power to a thing there. That's the core difficulty in understanding. Just dodging a giant lizard. Very good. Liberation, enlightenment, freedom, and so forth is already the case. It is already a priori. Already a priori? I don't even know if that makes sense. It is a priori. It is something that when the mind hears about, gets a grip upon it and sets about seeking it. The mind, this is a kind of one of those core concepts, if you like. The mind only thinks objectively. It can only think about objects. It can only perceive and conceptualize something that has objective qualities. This is where it gets a little bit more tricky. Therefore, if the mind can only think about or even recognize objectiveness, or that which is objective, then the question naturally arises: what is the point of even labeling something the mind? What I'm getting at is it perhaps creates an unnecessary duality where there isn't one. The feeling of cold air conditioning is, I have it, basically. I'm feeling my cold air conditioning right now. In common everyday language, in the language of the street, where we live, where the language that we use day to day, we generally say, I'm feeling the cold air. Nothing wrong with that description. But we are here in this dialogue looking at things a little bit more tightly, a little bit letting less slip by unexamined, you could say. The cold air that I think that I'm feeling, why couldn't we just skip the whole I'm perceiving cold air, I'm imagining cold air, I'm feeling, and just go straight to the cold air? The cold air. And therefore, all there is the cold air. I mean, there's a few other things going on. But getting back to the original point about the mind thinking it or perceiving it or registering it because it has objective qualities, we can lose the whole idea of the mind now. All there is what is sensed or what is perceived. That's all there is. Losing the idea that there is something perceiving it, which is the core confusion, you could say. That there seems to be something perceiving it, whether you call that a mind or a me or an I, but there's an unnecessary duality in that, an unnecessary extra step, you could even say. So therefore, the mind is the world is the mind, same difference. If you were to stop thinking and conceptualizing, hypothetically, I don't think that's possible, but anyway, if that was to stop dead, and you were just kinda looking around without any thought, you wouldn't have anything to say. There'd be nothing to say about the world anymore. And that is why it is said that the world is the mind is the world. Anyway, there's one of the basic kind of points, one of those ones that it's a little bit of a nice to have. None of this is essential, none of this needs to really be God, I suppose. Next is the registering quality. Again, the mind, this is an old concept which I've probably laboured in many previous brief dialogues. There is a natural presumption of cause and effect, a natural presumption of sequence, that the object or the event prior to the current event somehow caused the current event. That is a natural thinking process of the mind. That's what the mind, it just does it. It just naturally presumes cause. This caused that. Now, that's kind of an important concept to grasp as well, because what it essentially means is that every object the mind registers, everything in experience, the mind will naturally try to figure out what came before it that caused it. which creates the story of your life. That is, in essence, the story. The story of cause and effect, the story of how my life unfolds, about how the world affects me, it impacts on me, and how when I perform certain actions or behaviors, I in turn will affect the world. Again, a wonderful story, but it's not true. It seems to be, but it's not. The core difficulty in this entire subject is that this world, or this registering of the world, you could say, or awareness of the world, is presumed to be there because someone is there to register it, to experience it. The mind naturally reasons there must be an experiencer. There must be someone, some entity, some ghost in the machine who is experiencing all of this. That's a natural consequence of the mind's cause and effect conceptualizing. So now you can see, or you could say even, that the mind's causality seeking is just yet another phenomenon that occurs in this experience of the world. Whereas prior to that, it seemed that the mind was registering the world as it happened. It's like the belief that you're just sitting there watching things happen, and the events and sequences of the world are going through your senses and you're registering them. Okay? That's the belief, you could say. Whereas that now takes its place as an experience that's also happening in the world. Do you get that distinction? I don't know if I explained myself very well there. Let me try that again. The current conceptualizing by the mind is that I'm in the body, I'm sitting in this body, or I am this body, doesn't matter, and I'm looking out these two eyes, or sounds are coming in my ears, or in my senses of touch, or whatever sense, doesn't matter, into me. I'm this static or this benign entity that just sits there experiencing this. That's the common conceptualizing of personness, or being a person. The world is happening to me. I'm sitting there experiencing it. However, it's not the case. It's even the experience of being a person, you could say, is part of the world. Another thing that seems to be happening in the world. So there's a flipping, you could say, from I experience the world to I'm an experience in the world. So this makes it a little bit more interesting suddenly. This kind of starts to bend the mind a little bit when you try and think about it. Okay, so where were we? Cause and effect is an appearance. It seems to be how the world unfolds. And that seems to be registered by someone. which is, I guess, the core mechanism, you could say, of duality, of the belief in duality as fact. One thing we notice, or if I point to it, it can be noticed, is this existence is unbroken. There is no interruption to one's very existence. Whilst the experiences of the world, of life, come and go, whatever they are, and there are a multitude that are ever shifting and ever changing, the existence itself is and remains unbroken. And this can be verified with barely any thought. It's so self-evident, it's so obvious that even as you've been listening to this over the last 10-15 minutes, you haven't gone away. You didn't vanish at any point. Even though the words have been changing, you've probably been having thoughts that have popped in and out of your awareness. You might be walking and listening to this, sitting, I don't know. But everything in the world has been shifting around. Yet the existence itself, or the sense of existence, remains completely uninterrupted, unbroken, and that has never been interrupted. Your existence itself has never been interrupted. And if you think about it, it's uninterruptible. Even sleep doesn't interrupt existence. That's very easy to verify. Even though the experience of sleep is lying in bed, usually, eyes closed, and suddenly dreaming and then suddenly awake, with a bunch of crazy dreaming in there, the existence itself never went anywhere. You didn't not exist. There can't be an experience of not existing, or not having existence, you might say. There could be an experience of not being a person, or the impersonal. That could happen, which points to the fact that the personal, I beg your pardon, is an experience. There's another way, that's just another way to think about it, to conceptualize it. Good point, it's a good time to remind you that even though I'm an incredibly gifted and talented speaker, you've probably been thinking all along, this is mind fodder. This is food for the mind. These dialogues are things that the mind can get its teeth into and go, oh, I see, aha. But these dialogues, no matter how erudite, how wise, whatever, how clever I am, cannot dismantle the conceptualizing or conceptualized self listening, apparently, I should say, listening to this. Because that would imply that there is someone here doing that to someone over there. It also implies, while I think about it, some magical power that somehow transmits from here to there. Okay, it requires extra fancy conceptualizing for that to be true. When you find yourself in the realm of having to perform extra fancy conceptualizing in order for the world to make sense, you probably could guess at that point that you're backing a loser, betting against the house. So, I can't remember where I was up to in my little story. Damn it. Oh yeah, something about one's existence. Yeah, that's right. So existence itself is, well, let me rephrase this. The mind, which, as I said earlier, that believes or tries to rationalize that there must be a person, injecting a person into everything and everyone, believes, naturally of course, that the existence that is ever present is the existence of the person. This is my existence. This unbroken, unending quality of registering or silent registering that is ever present feels like me. That's what's naturally presumed to be me or I. That gives the story of one's life a sense of continuity, of this sort of seamless continuity. When you ask people in sort of everyday terms to tell you about their lives, they often formulate a lovely narrative about their birth, their early childhood, their upbringing, trials and tribulations, events. And if you ask them to reflect on their age, not intellectually, but just as an experience, people will often report that they don't feel like they've aged. They feel like they're the same person fundamentally. Of course, they will complain about getting wrinkles or putting on weight or aches and pains or diseases of age, but the fundamental self that they take themselves to be feels timeless, feels as if it never has aged. And that is a fact, Jack. That fundamental existence that is presumed to be me or I, in the middle or the center of all experience, is timeless. It is a timeless being. Being. So the word being is trying to convey a sort of combination of existence, to be, ongoing infinitely, being. That is not you who is being as a person, as a thing. That is life itself, or existence itself. Existence bees, or is. That is the isness, the same verb, to be. It just is. There's just an isness. And so, to start to wrap up this brief introductory dialogue, covering all the big, juicy concepts all in one brief dialogue, the world, when we think about it, is a product of our own thinking and conceptualizing. We presume, naturally, that it is a shared world, a shared conceptualizing. If I'm seeing a car and you're seeing a car, we're seeing the same car, we're seeing the same world. Of course, that requires a hell of a lot of conceptualizing to make that claim. The I, as in me, who's seeing the car itself, the belief in, because I'm an I, that you must be an I separate to me, are also seeing the car, the word seeing, the concept of seeing something, and so on and so forth. Little seemingly benign statements that seem so innocent, so obvious, are heavily laden in conceptualization. This message, you could say, is not suggesting that we stop conceptualizing, or even that conceptualizing is a problem, or in fact that the world is a problem in some way because this is all going on like this. It's very easy to hear this and think, oh, okay, I've got to somehow get rid of this idea that I'm a person or me, because that's false, and somehow come to see that there is no me. That's a wonderful idea, of course, but it's problematic, because if there isn't actually a self, as I'm proposing, a separate, independent self, a me, then the me, as a concept, has no agency, no power to do anything, let alone get rid of itself. Does that make sense? And furthermore, the me, because it is only conceptual, cannot gain anything, cannot get something, cannot become something, can't become enlightened or liberated. It would be like saying, where does Santa Claus live? And trying to figure it out. Where does Santa Claus live? Must live in the North Pole, but where exactly in the North Pole, I'm not sure, but if I really think about it, I'll find it. Now, spoiler alert, for those of you who still believe in Santa Claus, you might want to just turn off the recording for a sec. But there is no Santa Claus. So even all these thoughts about where Santa lives and what does Santa wear and what would Santa like to eat, adding on questions onto the central concept of Santa is a waste of time. It's fallacious. It won't get anywhere. But, and this is the bit that annoys everyone, it can't be helped. There's no one there that can stop conceptualizing. No one can stop it. Even hearing these amazing words in this brief dialogue will not prompt any one entity, energy, being, anything to stop the conceptualizing. It won't help it. The unfortunate core message, you could say, unfortunately, depending on your standpoint, is that it happens until it doesn't. And when I say it happens, it only apparently happens. It's only an appearance until it doesn't. Anyway, I'm almost at work. I'm running out of things to say. But thank you again for your listening, your attention, always appreciated. Comments, as usual, are very welcome. Have a great day.